I'm a believer that this team's going to win the national championships.
The rivalries, it's up there on top of the list, man. And if we allow them to devalue it, we lose a lot of what makes college football special. Don't let them do it. Don't let them devalue what it means to you. And welcome to JUCK on Bucks on a Wednesday morning. Appreciate you so much for joining me. We got another banger of a show today. We've got a Buckeye commitment to get to. If you didn't see my show last night, we'll go over that briefly. The portal opens like right now. We've already got some names to discuss today. A couple other tidbits to go through before we get to the second half of my conversation with Dillon that I had yesterday. And I think we should start at the portal because Ohio State most definitely in the market for help on the defensive line. There's no hiding that. Ryan Day's talked about it 3 separate times throughout the spring. Larry Johnson, when he talked about it at the beginning of the spring, said it's something we'll have to evaluate at the end. When talking about guys like Jason Moore, Ty Malone, with Ty Malone, he said, well, now he's been all in on football, no more baseball for over a year now. And, it's time for him. The conversations he's had with Jason Moore, he just needs to play more. He needs to play more. And he said, I've had the conversation. It's his time now. It's his time now. And it's 6'6", 307 pounds, not 75, 307 pounds for Jason Moore. Ty Malone, not too much smaller. We're talking about 2 behemoth dudes and veteran guys now, But I don't think it's just defensive tackle that the Buckeyes are looking at. I think if they can bring in another guy like a Logan George, who is a true 3-down defensive end, and it's the right situation, that they'll consider that as well. And I was just thinking back to before you bring in Logan George and before CJ Hicks gets moved from the linebacker room, you'd be looking at this defensive end group with Kenyatta Jackson, Caden Curry, Joshua Mickens, Dominic Kirks, and a couple of freshmen, which is pretty bleak. So thank goodness for finding Logan George in the portal. And with CJ Hicks, my opinion is he's not going to be a 3-down rotational defensive end. He's going to be someone that can assist you on 3rd down. So if you can get somebody else to come in and help, or if you end up playing Zion Grady a little bit more, we'll see how he progresses. But I do think that there is a shot that they may end up signing a defensive end as well. But the key is obviously in the middle. And when we talk about them, it's so interesting talking about the defensive line like this, which was one of the deepest in the country last year, and the offensive line depth that you were concerned about. And now it's like a total role reversal. But when we talk about the interior, we're looking at Caden McDonald and Edric as high-level starters. Like that's how I view them. I don't know how you view them, but I view them as high-level starters, even though we've not seen it out of them. You don't just need more depth. I think you need one more guy that's like them, one more high-level guy to be able to spell them without having some huge drop-off. And ideally, if you could get 2 more guys, that would be perfect. But you're probably living in a pipe dream if you're expecting that. But if you can just get one more high-level guy, I think you got what you need. At least enough to not have a huge drop-off when you're spelling those 2. Can Ohio State manufacture that? Can they make that happen? I think they can. We all know how this works. And without too much of a drop-off between Edric Houston and Caden McDonald to that 3rd man, I think you got what you need. So I'm excited. I hope that they can do it. But all eyes are going to be on the Buckeyes in this portal cycle as it pertains to that, because it was very glaring in the spring game, and it's being talked about kind of around the country as, whoa, the Buckeyes got a chink in the armor. So we'll see what happens. But as far as this spring portal, one thing that sticks out to me when I think about last year's spring portal, which didn't have anywhere near as much action as the previous one. Springs usually don't. Not as many high-quality guys, but the ones that enter command the big bucks. They command the big bucks, and I think back to Brian Kelly at LSU. This is the time last year when he was having that talk that got spread everywhere about, don't come to LSU if you want the big payday, if you want to be developed for the NFL. And it's just like everybody's just going like, man, That's not the right approach right now. These guys want paid. And he was frustrated. He was frustrated because there was so few top-notch defensive linemen in the portal in that spring window, and they were going for ridiculously high dollars. What makes this one different than last year? Well, we got to keep in mind that this is the last portal window before the house settlement deal is approved and revenue sharing comes about, which means just like in this end of season portal window, we're going to see teams that are willing to spend a lot more money now, more than they otherwise would have before the clearinghouse comes about, which is an attempt to end pay for play and get true name, image, and likeness deals that are fair market value, not fake deals that are pay for play. But if the Buckeyes want to make a play here, it's going to cost a lot of money. And we're about to find out just how bad they want it starting today. Portal open 10 days. That means they can get in the portal for 10 days. Doesn't mean that you can't still get them after that 10-day period. But I think it's going to move fast and furious for the top dogs, which is what the Buckeyes are looking for in the middle of that defensive line. Other positions that I think they'll have an eye out for, maybe a quarterback, a decent veteran kind of guy. Definitely, I think safety. I think they're going to be looking for a safety like they were in the first time around with Dillon Davis, who was the number one safety in the portal out of Purdue, a freshman All-American. He went to Oregon. And even though you got Malik Hartford and Jalen McClain, freshman Fahim Delane looks pretty good, but he's a freshman. I do think their eyes are peeled to keep him out for a safety if the proper situation arises there as well. But as far as guys who have already entered the portal or declared that they will be entering the portal today, you've got maybe the best fit right now out there on the market, Demarion Thomas out of Vanderbilt, who's got 2 years of eligibility left. He is 6'2", 334 pounds, so a big-bodied interior defensive lineman out of the state of Oklahoma, a run stuffer, a lane clogger, not going to get pushed around. 34 tackles last season for Vandy. He's got a low center of gravity, obviously a big body. And the question is that an upgrade from Jason Moore and Tywan Malone, which is kind of how I'm looking at all of this. Like, if it's not an upgrade from these two guys, I'm hard passing on all these dudes if I'm Ohio State. I don't need another one of them. I need a guy who can elevate from them and bridge the gap between my starters and where they're at right now. That's what I'm looking for. Other guys that I don't think fit the bill quite as good as Thomas would be Kendrick Gilbert out of Kentucky. 3 years of eligibility left. That's great. But that also kind of denotes that that's probably not going to be a guy who's going to be able to help you this year, which is what this is what you need. You need this year help. Though I do like to have another guy in the system if they think it's the right fit and a guy that can grow. Like you kind of are seeing, I think we're seeing this with Phillip Daniels on the offensive line. We thought maybe originally they brought him in and he was going to start at right tackle. It doesn't look like it. It looks like they brought him in to just be part of the offensive line group, and he's going to grow and learn how to be a tackle. And that's great. So if you're looking to bring one of these guys in for that purpose, okay. But, again, this isn't the pressing need here. But he's got 3 years of eligibility left, Kendrick Gilbert, out of Kentucky, University of Kentucky, 6'5", 275. Didn't play much in his freshman year. I think he played in 4 games in his redshirt freshman year. There's another guy out of Miami. Well, he's out of Langston Hughes, Georgia, a high school we're familiar with Jelani Thurman, Air Nolan, and now running back Carson Baker, who just might be joining us in the class of 2026 at Ohio State. And out of the University of Miami, 6'5", 295, appeared in just 8 games. And again, to me, doesn't sound like a guy who's going to come in and be an upgrade in 2025 from Jason Moore and Ty Malone. So Thomas looks like the best bet heading into heading into Wednesday as everything pops off. And I'm sure we'll see a lot more. There is an edge from Liberty who I think really looks like he'd be a nice fit. That's TJ Bush, 6'2", 265. Played a ton of football as a true freshman, then really blew up his sophomore year. 58 total tackles, 5.5 sacks. Love the way he plays football. 2 years of eligibility left. And when we're talking about defensive end, a 3-down defensive end, having a guy coming in that has a couple of years of eligibility left in that position, I like, because that's not necessary to really help you immediately, but someone that you can grow with, for a couple of years, that's good. So I like that. I like the look of him. And then we'll keep our eyes out for safety. We'll keep our eyes out for quarterbacks. In a side note, talking about the clearinghouse, where they will attempt to police these deals for fair market value. Now, it's going to inevitably go to court. Should it win and should it hold up? I think Ohio State is in a phenomenal position with this, because if we go to true NIL deals, a real fair market NIL system where you've got Ohio State, like what the difference in how much money these guys are going to make in a true NIL system is going to be the size of the companies they work with, what their advertising budgets are, and how many of these kind of deals you can get. And when you are at Ohio State in Columbus, Ohio, with the size of the companies around, the numbers of the companies around, the numbers of those companies that are affiliated in some way, shape, or form, or people at high-level positions with Ohio State University, you're looking at a really good situation, a situation that most schools aren't in, because most colleges aren't in a city like Columbus. So the Buckeyes, should this all go down like it's intended to, from the powers that be, and should it hold up, in a really, really good spot when it comes to the new system of revenue sharing, the clearinghouse, revenue sharing in the clearinghouse. And that's just a thought that I wanted to talk about. One more tidbit of news, and I know some of you are probably sick of hearing about this, but the Nico Iamaleava, where's he going to end up story, like, this has got to finish. And when it comes to a conclusion, I'm just really interested in how it turns out. But Pete Nakos of On3 has reported that, teams are flying off of the board here. People that some thought might be interested, Oregon, USC, Tulane, Texas Tech, like UNC, that all these teams people were throwing out as potential landing places for him because he can't land in the SEC are flying off the board. Where's this guy going to end? Don't know. But Nakos reported that there are several teams who are now saying if it gets to around $1 million, they're interested in taking a look here. So remember, he was making 2.4 before he sullied his reputation trying to go extort Tennessee and then getting basically kicked out and or leaving, whichever you think happened there, probably both. But 2.4 million, left it on the table, looks like a total jerk, and kind of ruined his reputation with every coach around the country, and tried to go get $4 million somewhere else. Many assumed that meant he had this deal lined up. Clearly he didn't. And now schools are saying, yeah, they'll talk to him for $1 million. Now, I think he'll sign for more than $1 million, but it sounds pretty likely he's going to take a pay cut throughout this and play at a much lesser place than Tennessee. Certainly not a place that he helped take to the playoffs last year, which is, the whole thing is karma for Tennessee and karma for acting like he did. I kind of love it. Now, on Tuesday in the morning, we talked about a wide receiver named Brock Boyd, who was a commit to TCU, and I thought would end up in the Buckeyes class. And at 2 in the afternoon, he made that official and flipped from TCU to Ohio State. So the Buckeyes get their 11th total commit, number 3 wide receiver. Well, I don't want to call him number 3, the 3rd wide receiver, Chris Henry Jr., Jaden Ricketts out of Pataskala, Ohio, and now Brock Boyd out of South Lake Carroll, Texas. He's a 3-star, 4-star, depending where you're looking, about the 400th ranked player in the country, which is kind of right at that cutoff line. And we're talking about a fast kid, 22.14, his fastest 200 meter. Got an older brother who's a wide receiver at Texas Tech, and it looked like for a while that he was looking at sticking in that Texas area, obviously committed to TCU, but he had bigger offers. He had Oklahoma, he had Oregon, he had Tennessee before Ohio State came calling when he came and visited in March to practice. and things picked up fast. So he came up earlier in the spring. Things pick up fast, and now he has flipped into the Buckeyes class from South Lake Carroll High School, very high-level Texas football, 6A Division II. As a sophomore, 57 catches, 800 yards, 7 touchdowns. As a junior, incredible production with 111 receptions, 1,875 yards in high school, and 20 total touchdowns. Led his team to the state championship. A lot of grabs, man. A lot of grabs. Got a really great feel for turning these guys around, consistently underthrown balls, always adjusting to it and coming down with the catch. But how's the speed? I think this play really shows it. When you see him slow down a little bit, those guys are running full speed. He turns on the jets. Let's watch it one more time. We're going to watch him. He's got to slow down to catch this ball. So he slows down right here, catches it, and then turns on the jets. Those guys are running full speed, can't catch him. That is big-time game speed for our dude Brock Boyd. Another great addition to the class. I love it. The class is now the number 2 class in the country behind USC in 24/7's rankings, still number 3 at On3 behind LSU and USC. So fantastic signing, fantastic commitment here, fantastic flip. I think he adds a ton. And Brian Hartline is just, I love the way he's building his receiver rooms. I love the way he's kind of mixing things up, different body styles, different styles of receivers. It's been really cool watching the 25 and 26 class take shape. As we look at other guys left on the board right now, if you were to guess who would be that 4th guy. Now, there was always going to be 4. 3 now, you got room for 1 more. And Caden Dixon-Wyatt looks like the most likely one to be that 4th right now. And if that were the case, that would be another banging wide receiver class for Brian Hartline. I would like you to remind you to please like the show, and we've got less than 50% of our daily viewers subscribed. If you're someone who's not subscribed to the show, maybe you don't really usually do that. It's not signing you up for anything. It doesn't make you obligated to do anything. All it does is make it easier for you to find the shows you like, and it helps the shows that you like. So please hit that subscribe button. Please hit that like button. It definitely goes a long way. You can join on the YouTube membership as well if you're someone who really loves the show. We do live streams every now and again, and it's a whole lot of fun. Now, the Buckeyes went to the White House on Monday, and out of that visit, we've got one of the funniest clips I think I've ever seen when Ohio State alum, Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, attempted to pick up the trophy, clearly not knowing that the trophy was a 2-piece trophy. He doesn't have a replica. He doesn't know that it's a 2-piece and that you pick it up like this. Unfortunately, none of the Buckeyes told him this either. They could have, like Trey made a really good catch because he almost dropped it backwards. And then he dropped the base on the ground. A hysterical clip, man. Like, could somebody tell the vice president it's 2 pieces, please? But a really funny one. The guys looked like they had a great time from their pictures. They posted everywhere. And a bunch of losers posted underneath how disappointed they were. Like, it's not a political endorsement to take a trip to the White House to be celebrated for your national championship game and meet the president of the United States. I got to shake a president's hand once. I was 22, a sitting president of the United States. And I've told that story. Look at the smile on my face. I've told that story 25 times in my life, and every time I get totally geeked about it. I can only imagine if I got to go to the White House and meet the president, whether he's the guy I voted for or not. It's just an unbelievable honor. So, Sonny Styles, by the way, looked like the baddest Secret Service agent you've ever seen in your life. I wish he put sunglasses on just for the hell of it. But one thing I do want to add, the Buckeyes presented the president with an Ohio State helmet and a Buckeye jersey. And if you're going to present the president of the United States with his own custom jersey, you're certainly going to do that with the most beautiful jersey that you have, which of course is also the one you chose to wear in the biggest stage in the sport, the national championship game, because the biggest stages call for the very, very best. And that means you've got to get your Ohio State jersey with its proper sleeves, the gray sleeves, of course. This is the jersey they presented to the president. which is just one more reason why everybody acknowledges that this is the true Ohio State jersey and that the team should be wearing this every week, and the other one should be a one-off. Clay Travis, I don't know what you call him anymore. He does political talk radio and sports. So I don't know what you call him, but Clay Travis, founded Outkick, does a bit of everything, I guess. Maybe about a year ago, came out with this take on Ryan Day's beard, talking about you can't trust someone who dyes their beard. And this is kind of an old take, but he did it again just the other day. You can't trust someone who dyes their beard. Here's what he said about Ryan Day.
If you have a beard and you dye your beard, you are not trustworthy. Because the whole purpose of having a beard is to embrace your rugged masculinity. And if you're dyeing your beard, you are defeating the whole purpose. I think this is why people didn't trust Ryan Day. I think Ryan Day's approval ratings would go up 1 billion%. Congratulations on the national title. If you really want to be beloved, don't dye your beard.
And talking about Ryan Day and his dyed beard and his rosacea, his rosy cheeks, nothing new. We've heard Michigan fans going in on this for a long time. Ohio State fans too, about the beard. But Clay Travis makes another clip about it. And this time, Mrs. Nina Day was not having it anymore. She responded very irritated that this guy was accusing her husband of dyeing his beard and calling him untrustworthy because of it. And she wanted to set the record straight, which she did. Now, I don't know if you thought before Nina Day clarified this, whether or not Ryan Day dyed his beard. But I do know one thing. My wife would not cover up for me if I dyed my beard. So I definitely believe her. My wife would jump right in with everybody else, making fun of me for dyeing my beard. And I know this from experience. All right, let's move on to the conclusion of my conversation with our buddy Dillon Davis. I'll check the comments while it's playing to see if you guys got anything good. But we ended the conversation yesterday talking about the wide receivers and the unfortunate situation that our guy Bryson Rodgers kind of finds himself in, essentially being one of the vets who's played the least. And then you got the up-and-coming group with Milan and Quincy kind of popping out. Bryson got pulled from the spring game with Jeremiah and Carnell and BI. He kind of played in the beginning with them. And then it was the young guys show. And he's kind of right there in the middle. So Dillon and I were talking about that yesterday, and that's where we're going to pick the conversation up. Now, apparently, we weren't the only ones talking about that. Some other people must have been talking about that as well, and maybe talking about what that means for Bryson and maybe he should transfer or something to that effect, I'm assuming. Because here's what Bryson had to say on Twitter today. I'm going to say this one time and one time only. These people that don't know ball, please stop talking and chatting. We are a unit, known to be the best unit in America. Trying to split us apart by our own fan base. Like, what are we doing, y'all? That's awesome. I love it. It's a great problem to have. But
Yeah,
man,
I mean,
I feel bad.
that's just the cutthroat nature of playing football at Ohio State, and we know it. And look, there's some unfortunate things to that. There are guys who are capable of playing at Ohio State that just, never do find a role on a team because saying nothing of their ability to do a good job, but they're just some all-time guys in front of them or some, future All-Americans and whatnot. Not even saying Bryson couldn't be that, but just, that's the nature of the beast at Ohio State. Again, Mylan Graham would start for any team in the country. Any team in the country, Mylan Graham would be a starter, and not just be a starter, but people would be excited. Like, hey, is this a future All-American kind of guy?
Yep.
And right now, I don't know how he gets on the field. So, again, a wonderful problem to have, but it is a problem. So,
yeah. Yeah, but Quincy looks just legit. I mean, he looks even bigger out there on the field with everybody than he did, seeing him walking around in practice. But they're loaded. Phillip Bell looked great. BP Miller looks like Marvin Harrison out there. When he learns how to play, it's gonna be another one. It's just wild. Yeah. But I do want to say, Dillon, I feel more confident coming out of that game than I did going in about my prediction of Bo Jackson leading this team in rushing a couple games this year. And I pointed out this morning on the show that I don't think most people pick up on this because of the style in which they run. When you watch CJ Donaldson, who looked really good as well. And not that he really had he didn't have much opportunity.
Right.
He had a big wide lane, but we got to see him run straight ahead, and it looked good with him running straight ahead. But when you watch him, you're like, that's a big back. When you watch Bo, who's only 5 pounds less than CJ, talking about 5 pounds difference, Bo moves like a much smaller guy. Like, he is just a different level of athlete. And out of those running backs on the field that day, Bo had to do the most creating. He had to break the most tackles. And I just came away even more impressed than I thought I would be watching Bo in his first action.
Yeah, of my short list of things that I thought people would be most excited or be the biggest takeaways coming out of the spring game, Bo Jackson. If people don't follow recruiting and they're not familiar with Bo Jackson, some people might even realize there's a Bo Jackson on the roster. But for those people who didn't follow recruiting or already knew, like, hey, this is a kid to watch, that Bo Jackson would be the name coming out of the spring that people are like, oh, wow, this kid's going to be really good. And even my dad, who, follows Ohio State football, religiously like I did, but, and knew about Bo Jackson, but had never watched film or anything like that. That was one of the first things we talked about when I talked to him after the game, what stood out to him. He said, this Bo Jackson kid is going to be great. Like, I think that's probably universally across the board in the fan base, saying Bo Jackson's going to be fantastic. I know that your prediction, that we talked about kind of what would have to happen for that prediction to ring true. There's certainly plenty of scenarios where that could happen. I know James Peoples, we've talked about him before. I'm so high on him before, but Bo Jackson's, is he as good as anybody in that running back room already? Maybe he is. I don't know. So, and I still think that James Peoples and CJ Donaldson are going to be your 1-2 guys. And I think Ohio State's more than fine with that. I think they'll be in a really good spot at the running back position if that's the case. But once again, how do you not get Bo Jackson on the field given what we saw in the spring? And he'll get ample time when those moments come, whether it's, blowouts or things like that, or even, if injuries arise. But, he's another one of those guys. He might just have to wait his turn, but he's already there. Like the next, really good running back at Ohio State's already there. Probably not just already there, probably already ready to be that guy just whenever the opportunity comes about. I mean, we're Ohio State fans, so we, obviously, if somebody from the outside was listening to this, they're going to, they would think, well, of course we're saying these things. We're not just going to, trash into these guys. We're going to pump all these guys up, because it's good for every Ohio State fan wants to hear this. But you're the same way. And anybody who's been listening to me since I've been on the show knows I won't say something unless I firmly believe it. But think about how often we find ourselves talking about not how good so-and-so is, who's going to start and be a big factor in how Ohio State does this year, but the guy waiting in the wings. And that's, this is back-to-back people we've already talked about where, hey, the next great player at that position isn't just there, but probably ready to go be the next great person as soon as he gets the opportunity to do so. I firmly believe that about Mylan Graham, Quincy Porter for that matter. And I believe that about Bo Jackson already. So once again,
it's extremely abnormal. It's extremely abnormal. And this is kind of what I was also saying in my wrap-up show, that, we're all talking about, and we'll get to it, but, the issue on the team right now is the backups on the defensive line. And most teams, fans coming out of a game like this, or they're talking about several position groups where they have deficiencies in the starting lineup. Yeah. Our biggest issue, we've got one, and it's in the 2 deep that we're talking about.
Yeah.
We got it pretty damn good. And we're looking at another team that has the talent, a whole lot of things need to happen right, but it has the talent to be as good as anybody in the country.
Well, if I know rosters are just, at their rosters, there's so much more that goes into it. But find me another roster, a better roster in college football. There's not a better roster in college football. There might be rosters that are, comparable. There may be the rival Ohio State's roster, but once again, Ohio State has as good a roster. By roster, I mean 2 deep, not just, the entire roster, but Ohio State has as good a 2 deep as anybody in the country. What they make of that, what they do with that remains to be seen, obviously. But Ohio State's 2 deep's as good as anybody in the country again. And that's a pretty good place to start, especially with a coach who, got that gorilla off his back and won that national championship. And so that's a really good place to start to have that guy leading a 2 deep that's as good as anybody in the country.
I checked this CBS list right before we got on, Dylan, and there's the top 150 players they ranked. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to just kind of browse through and see how many Buckeyes. So 5 Buckeyes in the top 150. They had Jeremiah at 1, Caleb Downs at 7, Sonny Styles at 27, Max Clare at 32, Carnell Tate at 51. I'm sorry, there were 6. There's one more. You wouldn't guess this in a million years. It was Philip Daniels was 127. They had Philip Daniels as the 6th best player on this roster.
So as a result, they think he's the best offensive lineman in that room for Ohio State. Then,
apparently so.
All right.
But
no disrespect to Philip Daniels, although
yeah,
I didn't love what I saw at times from him in the spring game.
It wasn't great. It wasn't great. He had a couple good ones, couple not so good ones, but I was onto the offensive line. Very impressed and happy for Jake Cook, who was in there in the 2 deep, mashing it. Guy who barely got his offer, had to scratch and claw for it. To see him jump Devontae Armstrong already, which doesn't speak well of that right there, which is, there's give and take with everything in the spring game. Like, I'm happy for Jake, but man, that's a bummer.
Yeah.
Did not expect to hear that, but good for him. And Austin Siereveld, when he was playing tackle when we started the spring, Dylan, my thought was, okay, we're just training him how to play tackle so he can be that 6th guy that rotates at guard. But if we need a tackle, he just might be the guy who's next up, who's the next best that we put in at tackle. They got him in there at right tackle in a battle that we thought was going to be Philip Daniels and Ian Moore, and who knows, it might still be. Or are they thinking like maybe he is the guy for right tackle?
No, he's going to start at right tackle. He's going to start there. I firmly believe that. I got the feeling probably midway through spring practice that was where they were going, the way they talked about him. And then it just, as spring went on, just more and more praise for Austin Siereveld and his ability to play tackle. Still, kind of learning the position as well. Look, last fall camp, when the illness was running through the offensive line room and a lot of guys missed it, like Austin Siereveld was playing tackle there too, and just in a true emergency setting, which then and there already spoke to his ability to just kind of, be flexible and versatile like that. Make no mistake about it. Like, Austin Siereveld is going to get a legitimate look at starting at tackle for Ohio State, at right tackle, presumably. And I would absolutely bet on that. If it were me, I expect that to be the case when Ohio State plays Texas in late August.
If that's the case, now I really like the depth right now you've got with Philip Daniels and Ian Moore behind those two.
Yeah.
That sounds really, really nice. FCS transfer from Idaho State, Logan George is a dude. Yeah. I love seeing him out there for the first time. He looked bigger than I thought. He looked fast. He knows what he's doing. I mean, he's a vet, and he's going to be someone that I think is going to get himself plenty of playing time in this rotation here, because he certainly popped. Now, granted, he wasn't always going against the best left tackle, but he did really, really good. I was really happy to see that. Ziggy Grady as well, for a freshman. Boy, he looks the part. He absolutely looks the part.
Yeah. Brian gave Zion a surprise shout out randomly. I forget which press conference it was at some point during the spring, that I don't think anybody was really expecting to hear his name come out of Ryan Day's mouth. And he did, unprovoked. Like, Ryan Day did that on his own. Nobody asked him directly about Zion Grady. So Zion Grady's making some moves. And he looked fantastic out there on Saturday as well. So that's great. I was never overly concerned with Ohio State's edge depth anyways, but it sounds like it's even better than maybe I thought it was. Maybe they don't have the premier pass rusher that that you hope you have, but I think they're solid in what they do have there. And Logan George, he just has a relentless motor, and you love a guy like that. And he's plenty athletic enough that with that relentless motor, like, there's a place that you're going to find a role, on a team like that. So I'll be honest with you, I didn't, when I heard that transfer announcement, I didn't have, a lot of expectations for him. Maybe that was a little bit of small school bias or, prejudice because of where he was coming from, and I didn't know anything about him. But he's gotten a lot of praise this spring as well. People talking about him, coaches talking about him, and had another, good performance, good showing in the spring game. So I firmly believe he's probably right there in that mix as well. I don't know, ultimately what that looks like in terms of that rotation with the rushmen and all that stuff. But I think Logan George is right there in that mix for sure.
Yeah. Moving back to the secondary, I'm starting to get the feeling, and I hope I'm wrong, but I'm starting to get the feeling Malik Hartford might be one of those players that's just maddening, that just makes a couple of boneheaded plays every game that drive me nuts. He just seems like one of those dudes to me, whether it's failing to rap Sam Dixon trying to lay the wood and giving up another 5 yards, or falling on his face when trying to get Mylan Graham. But I will say, I don't know if many people make that tackle right there with Mylan. But it was just kind of comical to see those two plays, same dude. And I'm like, oh man, after what happened his freshman year. But McLean looked really good. I thought Lorenzo Styles looks like just looks much more natural there than I felt like he did before to me. I don't know. Maybe that's my mind playing tricks on me, but it looked good. He looked good out there. I'm starting to feel like I think that was the one spot that if anybody was kind of wanting someone to get challenged, it was to see someone really challenge Lorenzo for that spot. And, sounds like Bryce has been giving him a challenge, but he looked good. I thought he looked like the clear one there.
Yeah, I mean, Lorenzo gets a lot of things said about him. I don't know, what it is. I know that, maybe he wasn't spectacular at any point last year. He's had a lot of things said about him. I think part of that is just because we know what the talent is behind him, waiting to try to find a way to get on the field. But I make no mistake, Lorenzo's going to play. He's going to be a part of that secondary, and probably rightfully so as well. He was still trying to find his way last year as well. So of course he's going to be more comfortable in the position now. He has a great body for the role that he plays as well. So Lorenzo's going to be in there, and I'm excited about Bryce, and I'm glad that they're getting that time, in that nickel, that slot position, to give him some versatility and give them depth there as well. But Lorenzo is going to play for that team, and like probably rightfully so. Now, as far as the safeties go, I hear what you're saying about Malik. I still think very highly of Malik. I think he'll be fine. There are some things that just can't happen. You're right about that play on Mylan Graham. Like watching Mylan on that play, going back to the Garrett Wilson thing, like I look at that and think that's Garrett Wilson. There's not a safety in the country. Forget about Harper trying to, find a starting role on this defense. There's not a safety in the country who would get a Garrett Wilson kind of guy in the open field down in that position, and watching Mylan do that. Like this, you're just not going to make. I don't say you're not going to make that play. It would be a great play to make, and I don't expect it to be made very often. So
no, he put that foot in the ground moving like that. No.
And it's going to be interesting though, because Jalen McLean is the real deal. He's a great player, but I still think a lot of Malik as well. And it seems like Malik's gotten that first shot, all spring, for whatever that's worth. So it's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out. Would I be shocked if Jalen ultimately, gets up there and gets in that position? No, but I still think, if I were making any projections, and for whatever it's worth, coming out in spring with so much time, I still think Malik Hartford's going to get that first chance come fall. So, if it happens, I think Ohio State would be in a fine spot. Once again, knowing the depth behind them as well, that if things don't start out well, Jalen's right there ready to go. So
when everything's really, really good, things that aren't really, really good stand out. And I texted you after the game. It was probably on the tip of your tongue too. And that was obviously the play of and the lack of development that we've seen from Jason Moore, Taiwan Malone, the interior, the guys that we thought, the guys that really have a lot of advantages, man. They got a lot of advantages. They should be further along. They should at least be able to dominate guys like Gabe Van Sickle and Jake Cook. They should be able to do that. They didn't. They got handled pretty well, quite a bit. And they were outplayed just man to man. And I couldn't believe it. It makes me think like, all right, Ryan Day told us this in 3 press conferences throughout the spring, that it wasn't where it needed to be, then it had improved, but it still wasn't where it needed to be. And I'm like, yeah, no wonder he was so transparent. There was no hiding it. Those dudes aren't ready. The transfer portal opens tomorrow, Wednesday, as we talk here. They've got to be active shopping in the transfer portal to try to make something happen there. Freshman Jarquez Carter looked stronger, hungrier, and more explosive than those guys.
Yeah, that was what I asked Ryan Day about after the game. He mentioned before my question about they know they have what they need at running back spot. It's just a matter of guys, becoming more consistent and going out and doing what they need to do. And then following that up, I asked him, like, do you feel like you have what you need along the defensive line? And I should have phrased that better, because I was clearly talking about the defensive tackles. I think they have mostly what they need on the edge. But I should have asked specifically. But I think he knew. I know he knew. If he feels like they have what they need at defensive tackle, are the guys they need on campus already. And he said they're going to take a hard look at it. And I get, he said that he doesn't want to make any snap judgments based off of just what he thought he saw before having watched the film in the spring game, obviously. But you could sense the concern in his voice.
Well, Dillon, he said without watching the film, when you asked him, he said it looked like they got pushed. The offense was knocking them back.
Well, like that was, it was undeniable, right? I mean, everybody who watched it saw that, and they knew what they were watching and noticed that. It's not good. We've talked about this before. That I made the comment. I hope that they can just get to a point where it's good enough. I've long since, punted on the idea that maybe they could be an asset or above average or be like a very real part of a great defense. I hope it's just not a fatal flaw at this point. And even going out in the portal and getting whatever's out there, admittedly, I don't know who's out there, what's available. That could also be changing by the minute when Ohio State starts putting out feelers that they're in the market for interior defensive lined up. Who knows about a guy who maybe wasn't otherwise thinking it, who decides, hey, I'll get in there. So all that stuff remains to be seen. But so I don't know what's out there. But the bottom line is, even if they go out and get a guy, I'm not sure that it makes a difference in the sense that it's going to make them make it a premier unit. I just hope that it patches up some holes and helps them to be a good enough unit. The idea that guys like Jason Moore, Tywan Malone, those guys are all of a sudden going to take a huge step forward in the fall. These are guys who've been there for a little while now. Jason Moore, I don't understand what happened. Last fall, we were hearing Jason Moore's name quite often, which at that time last year seemed, okay, well, that makes sense. It's time for him to go. This is where he makes his move if he's going to make a move at Ohio State. And it never materialized. He didn't see the field. And then so the idea that all of a sudden from this spring looking like they have, and they're going to make a big jump, in fall, and all of a sudden be guys who are ready to add depth to that spot when Ohio State starts the season is probably it's probably wishful thinking to think that could happen. So they're going to have to go get help. I don't know what the help is, how many guys, what it looks like, but they're going to have to go get help. They cannot go into fall camp with what they have on the roster right now, because it's not just not good enough. It's subpar. It's a problem. It's not good. And if you think about teams, down the line, if you look at if you look at their schedule, certainly the one that certainly sticks out is, think about where this defensive line sits now, and take them to Ann Arbor against a football team who's going to want to pound the rock and has done so with decent success through the years, recent years against Ohio State. Oh, that would scare the hell out of me. And that's obviously way down the line, last game of the regular season, but just thinking about a game like that in mind, and those defensive tackles trying to plug up holes there and make life difficult for an offense of that type, that style, not good. So we'll see, but it was the biggest problem coming into the spring. It remains the biggest problem coming out of the spring, and they're going to have to go get help. And even then, that's not a guarantee that it solves or even remotely solves the problem.
Right.
So it's probably still going to be a problem come fall camp. It's probably going to be a problem when Ohio State takes the field against Texas at the end of August. I don't want to start talking about this now, but that's a bad problem to have. Okay. That's a tough problem to have for a defense. If you think about the overall health of your defense, to be soft in the middle is not a good place to start. So
it's really unconscionable, to be honest. It really is. Obviously the loss of Hero looms large, but if you go into this season with this kind of talent everywhere, and you got a fatal flaw that ends up getting you beat by teams like Michigan that want to play football like that, yeah, man, there's no looking past that one. Like, you got a bigger problem. You got a bigger problem than just that.
Make no mistake about this. Obviously, I think we all feel really good about the top of that too deep, the top of the depth chart there. We feel really good about, but how many plays does K-Mac play this year? How many plays can he physically play? What kind of shape is he going to be in?
Yeah.
So it's and knowing not just what he can do, but how they like to approach those positions and the number of plays they want those guys to play. If they're gonna stick with that plan come hell or high water, and the guys behind them are gonna play, whether they're good enough to or not, like it's not good. But
we've seen before.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So I don't want to sound the alarm and say that Ohio State has nothing at defensive tackle. We know that they have two guys that everybody's really excited about. We think are not just capable, but they're going to be assets to a good defense. But the bottom line is two of those guys that's not enough. It's not even close to enough. That's saying nothing of injuries, but just from the sheer number of snaps throughout a game, it's not enough. And if injuries were to arise, then now you're getting into a really, really bad spot. So, but we'll talk about that come fall.
All right, brother. That's all I got. Sorry, guys. Didn't mean to end that on that note. I probably should have put that in the middle of the notes there. But all in all, when we look at everything, man, I feel great coming out of spring about this team. Even better than I thought I would entering in the spring. Maybe not in the spring, but as we were looking towards the end of the year last year, and you're looking forward to next year, and I'm thinking at that point, there's going to be a little dip. I'm going to have to lower the expectations a little bit. We're losing all these guys, but now that we've seen this collection of guys playing together, we're watching it shape up. I got really high hopes, especially when we look around the country at the usual suspects dealing with the exact same problem.
Yeah, I don't want to end on doom and gloom, so I'm going to say one more thing on a much brighter note. Before Saturday, just thinking about Ohio State and, excited for the season, but I just couldn't stop lamenting the fact that they open up with Texas to start the season, given where they're at the quarterback spot. And I was like, man, just of all the years where you just wish you had the Akrons of the world, lined up for the schedule, it's this year. Ryan Day almost basically said that during the press conference, and he tried to walk it back a little bit because he didn't want to be, disrespectful to playing the Akrons of the world. But we know Ryan Day has to walk a fine line between saying what he knows, he thinks in his head, and being the head football coach at Ohio State and not saying the wrong things. But Ryan Day almost said as much as well about the fact that they're not opening with the Akrons of the world or the Youngstown States or whatever the case may be. And I've been thinking about that a lot. Man, if there was ever a season where they had somebody they could kind of ease into, whatever quarterback ultimately starts, it's this year. But after having watched Julian on Saturday, I'm glad they're opening with Texas. I'm glad that he's going to get that shot right away to announce his, official arrival to the college football world, because I feel a heck of a lot better about Ohio State taking on an opponent like that to start the season after seeing what Julian did on Saturday, and knowing what he already had in terms of talent. So I can't wait. I'm already excited, obviously, for that game and just getting college football back in general. But I'm even more excited after watching Julian now, because I can't wait to see what he does, and the opportunity he has to really showcase his talent to that kind of audience against that kind of football team. So
I love it, Dylan, because if they win the game, it is man, we're on cloud nine. Here we go. We got it. And you beat Arch, and you beat Texas, and you beat Texas again. Right. And then, you got them again the following year. So, that's going to hurt them bad, but, I love it. I love it, man. Hey, that's all I got, Dill. Thanks so much for joining me tonight. I appreciate you, buddy.
My pleasure. Always enjoy it. Can't wait to do it again.
All right. Talk soon, bud.